When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With twinspires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with twinspires. And now you can race to victory with twinspires tournaments.
Welcome back to the twinspires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with Vance Hanson and James Scully. We're back after Kentucky Derby 151 and the 151st Kentucky Oaks. We're going to talk those two races. Good Cheer remains unbeaten after winning that Kentucky Oaks. And we're also going to look at some other performers from Churchill Downs over that Kentucky Derby week. Vance, James, it was good to see you in Louisville this past week. And I will start things off with you, Vance. You didn't just have a good Kentucky Derby. You also were watching overseas and hitting winners overseas too. But let's talk Derby 151 and your thoughts on that race.
Well, despite the sloppy conditions, it was a pretty formful race, all things said. We had a projected fast pace, as many predicted, and we had arguably the two best horses on paper going into the race, run 1-2. Sovereignty overtaking Journalism in the stretch. I thought it was a thrilling race until the eighth pole, and then Sovereignty poked his head in front and asserted himself at the end to win pretty convincingly. So good job all around by trainer Bill Mott, jockey Junior Alvarado. I thought those two ran great race. Baeza, I think, who came along for third. He lacked the seasoning that the top two had, but he ran a terrific race as well. He's going to improve as the season progresses. And so this is a really good group of 3-year-old colts, I think, going forward, especially these top three. And I hope to see them perform not only this summer, but into the fall. I think once they get fast enough, they're going to they'll be competitive against a very strong group of older horses, and the Breeders' Cup Classic does have the potential to be a really solid race.
James, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll agree with Vance's sentiments. Definitely the race, like a lot of people thought, had a hot pace and it set up with a late runner. And after 3/4 of a mile with 3/8 of a mile remaining, the top four finishers were 11th or worse. Journalism was 11th with 3/8 remaining. Baeza was 12th. Sovereignty was 17th. And Final Gambit, who was 4th, was 19th. So they were all outside the top 10, approaching the far turn. And they all, the only horse, I thought I'll just start as far as the speed goes. I thought the best horse, you had an opening quartet where you had Citizen Bull, and you had Nailquist, you had American Promise was up there, and Owen Almighty. And of the horses that were in the first pack, Owen Almighty ran the best race of them all. He really took to the mud, and you can see him on the far outside there on the white silks and a co-third right now. And when Nailquist quit at the top of the stretch after they entered the stretch, Nailquist just sort of backed out of it pretty quickly. Owen Almighty was left with a clear lead. But Journalism and Sovereignty were coming at that point. Sovereignty, of the top three finishers, I thought that he had the worst of it, you could say, getting pinched after the start. Looking at the overhead shot, it looks like he stumbles slightly, quickly recovers, but no, you don't. That was just it was a trouble early in the race, at least minor trouble. Journalism got forced over a twirling mohawk. A flying mohawk was a little bit rank and was going towards the inside and sort of pushed him a couple pass over to the rail, and he sort of got funneled back a little bit. I thought to like outside the top 10. So theoretically, he probably wanted to sit a little bit closer than he was, I thought, Journalism. But from that point on, it was a perfect trip, and he really had no excuses. Sovereignty just outfinished him. As far as Baeza, he was kept wide early. When Pratt tried to tucked him in, approaching the far turn, he was in tight a little bit on the far turn, but he just didn't have the turn of foot to run with Sovereignty, who ran right by him on the far turn. once Baeza spun extremely wide in this stretch, he finished up as fast as any of them. But the top two had already gotten the jump on him, and Sovereignty wasn't coming back to him. So Baeza, I mean, off of that race, I've heard people make the mention, he had just broke his maiden 2 starts previously. Therefore, he was real light on foundation. He was like a May 18th foal. He's the youngest horse in the race, not even 3 years old. And you can make a case that it was sort of like Curlin running third in the 2007 Derby. They're going to have a hard time, you would think, beating Baeza moving forward if he comes out of the race good. He's going to be right up there with the top two. But Sovereignty got a triple-digit speed rating, a Brisnet triple-digit speed rating. First time he had done that. Like I said, got to give him congratulations. His affinity for the track showed, and Bill Mott, everything I think went really smoothly in his preparations. As far as the most trouble in the field, I thought Burnham Square got the worst of it. He got a really good trip early, I thought. Brian got him in a good spot, but Admire Daytona forced him to check going into the far turn. And then after he got in the far turn, Admire Daytona was in front of him at that point. He backed right up into him. So twice it basically stopped his momentum, and then he came on and ran 6. So that was a horse that really sort of didn't get the best of it, that ran well. But I do think that the top 3 are all top-level 3-year-olds. And like Vance said initially, form held, I think, with the outcome being Sovereignty, Journalism, Baeza.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. I thought it was pretty clear, especially when we had Rodriguez come out and Grande. It made it a little bit easier to even think Journalism was going to be almost a surefire top 3. I was always trying to play against him. Sovereignty had been my top pick for a long time, but I started giving out this long shot exacta that did not have any chance at all. It was Citizen Bull and Tistastic, and I don't know what happened with Tistastic. He was not involved in that race, but Sovereignty already knew had good form at Churchill Downs as a 2-year-old, and just seemed like with a hot pace we were going to have a closer come through, and that in fact was Sovereignty. Citizen Bull I thought was interesting. I heard that, being on the rail was not a good spot that day, but when Citizen Bull was right out in the front and then went to the middle of the track a little bit, I was a little concerned there too. But distance, I always wondered if he was going to be able to handle. I think Rodriguez had a better shot between the 2 Baffert runners of handling a 1.25 miles, and Citizen Bull, I just don't think that's the distance for him at all. Any other thoughts?
I think Rodriguez is definitely going to be the better distance horse, but Citizen Bull just had so much more foundation. I think Baffert was worried about like his head, the maturity facet to it being drawn inside. Like that post 4 with Rodriguez, Drew, that would have done Baeza no favors either. I think drawing into the field helped Baeza, because he didn't have to deal with all that craziness at the beginning. When Citizen Bull went straight to the right, that affected all those horses on the inside. American Promise and all of them got a little bang. Oh, Nailquist did not. Now, that was a great ride by Javier Castellano. If you watch him, he just avoided all of that, just went right. When he just let him go right in front of him, went on, never had a thing happen. But a bunch of those horses were affected by that veering out.
Final Gambit too, breaking from, Drew Post 3 was technically moved over 1, but he was kind of roughed at the start, and I will say he flows pretty well, all things considered. And once again, the Jeffrey B. Stakes actually has become kind of a major prep for this race, because we had 2 fills finish second. Rich Strike, of course, win the Kentucky Derby, and now Final Gambit coming out of that win and finishing 4th, which I thought was honestly pretty logical that he was going to be in the top 4 too. Owen Almighty was the biggest surprise for me, holding on for 5th.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you're not alone with that. I gave him no chance. He and Render Judgment were 2 horses I gave no chance to, and he loved the mud. Owen Almighty did, and I didn't take that into consideration. And he greatly outperformed my expectations.
I think the smallest, it wasn't a surprise whatsoever. I think everyone knew, moving over to the Kentucky Oaks, that Good Cheer was probably going to win this race, and she did in fact win that race by 2 1/4 lengths, and is now unbeaten from 7 starts. And Godolphin got a 2nd win in the Kentucky Oaks, also got their 1st win in the Kentucky Derby. James, thoughts on Good Cheer? overall? And did you think there were any surprises underneath with Drexel Hill, Bless the Broken? I know you've liked Bless the Broken heading into this race as at least one to finish in the money potentially, but what did you think about the race overall?
Well, I thought that Luis Saez did a really good job riding Good Cheer. We'll see here on the first turn. She was like in a little bit tight, I thought, in between behind horses, like maybe not in the best of spots briefly. But when they go into the backstretch, he gets her, angles her out to the outside. And once he got her in that spot, she was like towards mid-pack. She was in a perfect positioning because she didn't have to worry about losing ground. She could go as wide as she wanted to. She was the best horse in the field. The one thing she needed to avoid was trouble. And once he got to the backstretch and got her outside, like I said, then, he was sitting a perfect trip. She made her move off the turn and, put him away nicely. She's just really, really good. She's not the flashiest runner you'll see, but she's got the gears when she needs them. I mean, we've seen it in all her races. She gets to the top of the stretch, she's got more to offer. So Brad Cox, undefeated from 7 starts. The one caveat I'll say about the race is the competition. I'm just not sold on the competition, but that's not fair to the winner per se. I mean, I don't remember who some other good fillies in the past were beating. And but as far as this race went, Timma was the only horse that I think was a major prep winner that was like a contender, or considered to be a logical contender, that ran pretty good for 4th. I think Drexel Hill ran 2nd and Bless the Broken that were 3rd. Really liked the wet track, and they got the setup. They were both late runners in a race that had a fast pace in it. So it set up well for them. And, Lucara, she just did the 9 furlongs, tripped her up. She ran a real good race on the front end for about a mile, almost, into the stretch, and then just gave way. Quiet Side was further off the pace than she was in the Fantasy and in the Honeybee, and she went wide on the turn and was flat late. So, and Simply Joking, I didn't understand her trip. I mean, she should have been up on the front end, I thought. So her main rivals per se didn't show up. I mean, weren't there like in deep stretch challenging her. But Good Cheer can only beat who she shows up to run against her, and she proved to be a champion in a sense. She's the clear class of the 3-year-old filly division.
Vance, anything to add on that?
I agree with pretty much all of those sentiments. I think the off track perhaps didn't help Good Cheer's competition necessarily, but in the end, it really didn't matter. I mean, she proved her superiority over this group, and for the 2nd straight year, we could be looking at another champion 3-year-old filly who's just an utter dominant force in it. I mean, we had Torpedo Anna last year pretty much sweeping the board in 3-year-old filly restricted races. I can see Good Cheer doing the exact same thing with the Acorn coming up, and then the 2 other races at Saratoga, the Coaching Club American Oaks and the Alabama. And the further she goes, the better. So the 1.25 mile Alabama should hit her between the eyes. The Cox stable still has the champion from last year, Immersive, to come back later this year, but I'm not sure Immersive wants to take on Good Cheer at this moment. So we'll see how Cox separates the 2 as the season progresses. But for me, Good Cheer looks like Torpedo Anna 2.0 this year so far.
I agree. And I think you're right with it being an off track. It only helped Good Cheer. She already had a huge win by 17 lengths over a sloppy track as a 2-year-old at Churchill Downs. And then it kind of took away, I thought, the chances of Tenma, who I really liked as the potential upsetter, having never raced over an off track, being that she was out in California. I do wonder if it had been a fast track, could something crazy have happened? But Good Cheer really is the class of her class. So it was no shock at all. Drexel Hill, I did have as my long shot play to come up there. She had been working well, I thought, and just talking to Ben Curtis after Anna Marie won off the pace, I thought we would probably see something similar. And you gotta Bless the Broken, always shows up and always finishes in the money, it feels like, for Will Walden.
Yeah, Will Walden did a heck of a job with that filly. She had run well, I guess, in the Silver Bowl day on a sloppy track at Fairgrounds to place, but she was like almost 30-1 for a reason. She hadn't beaten really good fillies, and she stepped up with a massive effort in that race. And as far as Drexel Hill, I made the mention, back in 2020. When Tacitus and Summerhouse worked, Tacitus was the favorite in the race, and he was under a hold, and Summerhouse was being ridden a little bit, but he outfinished him right before the wire. And I saw that same thing in a workout with Drexel Hill and Flying Mohawk. I mean, everybody talked about how Flying Mohawk was under a hold and looked the better of the two throughout the stretch. But right at the wire, Drexel Hill, who had been behind him, surged to put a head in front of the wire. So she had shown some gameness, I think, and she had run a good race and to win her final prep. But it was a massive class hike, and she passed it. I think what really helped her was the wet track as far as Drexel Hill goes.
We had some other big results at Churchill Downs on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Vance, who else caught your eye this weekend?
Well, I think one of the standout performances was in the Ali Sheba Stakes on Friday. It was the comeback race for Fierceness, the 2-year-old champion a couple years ago, near champion last year, and he turned in a track record-setting performance. We'll see here ranging up on the outside here under John Velasquez. Fierceness hadn't run since finishing second in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but this was a super effort. Like I said, he broke the track record for a mile and a 16th, which was set about 13 years ago in the Ali Sheba Stakes. And this race is going to set him up really well for his next start, which is supposed to be the Met Mile at Saratoga. And that's turning into that could be one of the best editions of the Met Mile that we've seen over the last few years. White Abario is pointing for it. Just a Touch, who came back recently at Keeneland, and then Raging Torrent, who comes off of a big win in the Godolphin Mile in Dubai. So Fierceness, unlike Sierra Leone, who pipped him for the 3-year-old championship last year, got off to a winning start for this season, and his season looks really bright going forward. I'd also mention, of course, the big international story of the weekend was Godolphins not only winning the Derby and the Oaks in this country, but also sweeping England's first 2 classics. They won the 2,000 Guineas on Saturday with Ruling Court, and on Sunday, Desert Flower maintained her undefeated record in the 1,000 Guineas. Plus, they had Cinderella's Dream, winning the Dahlia Stakes at Newmarket on Sunday as well. She's supposed to come back to America this summer to compete, and she was won a race or two here last summer. So Godolphin is just hitting on all cylinders all over the world, and this was a really unprecedented achievement to win the Kentucky Derby, Oaks, and the English Guineas. I don't think we'll even, if Godolphin tries to do it again, I don't think they'll be able to do it again, and I don't think any other stable will either.
Yeah,
I don't think so. That was a great. Vance hit it on the nail. I mean, that's an accomplishment of accomplishments right there. Kudos to Godolphin for that. And everything he said about Fierceness, I agree with wholeheartedly. I will point out, Locked won that Cigar Mile. I thought he took a step back in a Pegasus. He wasn't in the same area code as White Abario. In fact, he got up in the final strides to edge Skippy Longstocking by head. And then so he's an on again, off again horse right now. He's in this pattern where Cigar Mile, not that good. San Anita Handicap, not that good Friday. I'm going to bet Lock next time. He's going to bounce back with a big effort off of that Gulf Fourth on Friday. But what else? I'm going to mention. I'll mention 2 horses. I'll mention a race and a horse. I've been watching racing for more than 40 years, and in that stretch run of the Churchill Downs Stakes on Saturday, if I had been betting on any one of 5 horses inside the 16th pole, I would have thought that I could win the race. That was a race after it was over, the Churchill Downs Stakes, the Grade 1 Churchill Downs Stakes, that I was like, that's one of the best races you'll ever see. And In fact, of those 5 horses inside the 16th pole, the one that I would have given you the longest odds on was Mind Frame. I thought at that point, Milligan and Nisos, all they needed to do, we're going to see it right here, entering the final 16th of a mile. We got Nisos and Milligan, or Milligan and Nisos towards the outside. You had Bookham Dano with the lead in the stretch, still fighting for it all. Banishing's going to come up in this red and duck down to the inside. I thought he might be making a winning move there. And then last on the scene is Mind Frame on the far outside. 5 horses across the wire. That was as good as it gets on Saturday as far as a race goes. Like I said, I mean, the hairs were standing up on my arm after I watched that. I had Mind Frame in a pick 5, but I certainly was not rooting for him to win the race. But I still loved it. Loved every second of it. The other horse I'll mention, Bob Baffert shipped in horses to Churchill Downs this week and ran a ton of horses all week long. The best one I saw came in an allowance race early on Saturday, race 3, goal-oriented. If you haven't seen this allowance race, he beats Hypnus and Tis Secure and Bracket Rapture and Bracket Busters and others. But, man, to me, Hypnus was coming at him in the stretch, and I thought he was just sort of waiting on him. I mean, he was waiting on a challenge. Hypnus gets beat at less than a length. I don't think he was ever going by him. I think that horse had a lot more to give. In his first race, which came on April 6th, that he won at 6 furlongs, he got a 98 speed rating. And on Saturday, goal-oriented got a 104. So that was one of the top figures of the weekend. And this colt's by Not This Time, one of the super sires out there in the world, and out of Busy Caroline, who was a multiple graded stakes winner on turf, and she's a sister to beloved champion Lady Eli. So pedigree fits, goal-oriented. That was his first race. Also, you get a chance to watch that replay of goal-oriented. Check out the neck on that horse. I was super impressed by his physicality. I mean, he is a big horse, and long and two and scopy and everything. So I was really intrigued by his performance. I think he's got the chance. I mean, we'll see what happens with Rodriguez. There's a horse that I think is going to get better, perhaps with age, but. Goal-oriented could be the best of all the Baffert 3-year-olds, and he's 2 for 2 after winning allowance on Saturday.
And right now the plan is Preakness for Rodriguez, right?
Yeah, Preakness for Rodriguez. Baffert, he was a trainer scratch, but he said he had a bruised foot. So, I mean, he's got to be over that, obviously, to run. But I think all signs are if he's good to go, he's going to run in the Preakness. And Preakness could use him, We'll see what's up with journalism, whether he stays in the mix, but not going to be a lot of horses from the Derby in it.
Baffert also got that one with Fort Bragg. He did have a few runners, including Nisos, coming off very long layoffs over a year. We had Speedboat Beach, who was coming off about a year layoff in that St. Matthews overnight stakes, but a stablemate got the win. And then Nisos, I thought all things considered, actually ran a great race. I was really not sure what to expect with such a long layoff, but he was right there. Finished, well, it was actually a dead heat, Nisos and Banishing for second.
Yeah, for what, third or for second? Yeah, for
second. And then Bookham Dano was 4th. But yeah, I mean, there's the photo finish right there. And
yeah, and the thing with Nisos is, I mean, he was like, Baffert wasn't eligible for the Derby, but before he got hurt last year in February, he looked like a superstar in the making, and he was going to be aiming for the Preakness at Belmont. After that race, I'm sure Baffert will try him at a longer distance, but I'm a little worried he could wind up being a sprinter type.
Yeah, that horse has always had triple-digit speed figures. I was thinking too last year if he could have run the Preakness, that would have been my pick.
That race though should produce some Met Mile horses, like Vance was saying. Met Mile, I mean, Mind Frame and Nisos should both be going there.
I know Bookham Dano's owners. I talked to them after the race, and they're looking at Saratoga for Belmont weekend, and all those horses, even Mulligan, I'm sure is going to bounce back off that effort. That was a loaded field. That was honestly one of the most exciting finish we saw all weekend, but just top to bottom, that field I thought was great. Of course, the Derby field was great too. I mean, 19 of the top horses, top 3-year-olds.
What other races caught your eye?
What other races? Well, I was gonna, that was my big one, James, was the Churchill Downs Stakes, but I'll finish off by noting that we had some record handle. We broke last year's record with all sources betting on the Kentucky Derby card at Churchill Downs. It was 349 million, up 9% from the previous year of 320.5 million. And rain didn't matter. It actually, people were invested in this race, and it was funny. I think it was harder to predict the weather than the actual Derby outcome, because on Monday we thought it was going to be sunny on Derby Day, and it ended up being the one day we had a true off track, I thought. But twinspires as well, we had a record of 108 million in wagering on races for the Kentucky Derby Day program, up 17% over the record in 2024. And all around, I thought it was a very successful Derby. Even the mud can't keep people away from watching the first leg of the Triple Crown. So congrats to everyone involved.
Record TV ratings.
That's right, yeah.
Most viewed Derby since 1989. And listen, the Derby is as popular as ever. It's a true bucket item list. People want to go to it. And I just think it's great. This weekend was a great example. Like, I think the entire industry from coast to coast, you saw horsemen from all over. They all want to come run in the undercard stakes and support the whole event. So it's just great because I think it brings the whole industry together.
I agree. And now what are we, 363 days? I don't know. I don't know the math. I need to get some sleep, but we'll do it all over again next year.
Our top 10s are due next week.
That's right. Can't wait. All right. Well, we will be back next Tuesday to talk more racing recaps, and hope you all enjoyed Derby weekend. We will see you next time.
When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With twinspires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with twinspires. And now you can race to victory with twinspires tournaments.